everybody, and welcome to the Adapt with Danette F-M podcast. My name is Jez F-M. I'm the podcast producer here and Danette's son. We did record an intro to this episode, and it is an amazing episode. However, on a technical note, something went wrong on my end. It was to do with the recording and the way we recorded it, and unfortunately, it was not really listenable to. I debated whether about keeping it in or not, the tops and tails of this episode, but I ultimately decided not to go with it just because I thought your listening experience was going to be quite degraded and people might switch off to what was otherwise a really, really good conversation with Paul McGregor. So there's not going to be the typical intro and outro. This is going to be the intro, and I'm just going to throw to the interview that Danette did with Paul McGregor. And if you love this interview, we also have had him on the Magical Learning podcast very recently, so go check that one out as well. But basically what I'm going to do here is we've got this intro. If you just wanted to skip through this, I'm sure I'll have it in the show notes where you can just jump straight into the interview. Afterwards, we did, of course, have a listener question, and I'm going to keep Danette's answer to that because Danette's audio was pretty good, but you won't hear my response at the end there. Of course, I wanted to mention that this is, of course, the companion podcast to the amazing book, The Adaptable Leader by Danette Fenton-Menzies. If you haven't read that one, you can check it out. Any of the links are available not only in the profile of this show, but also on YouTube and on Spotify, no matter where you're kind of listening to this. So, sorry it's a bit unusual this episode, but I promise you it's as good as a normal one. So enjoy, stay adaptable, and thank you for listening.
Hello and welcome everyone to season 2 of Adapt with Danette F-M. And in this season, we're looking at collaboration and problem solving. And today I've got a guest, Paul McGregor, coming in from New Zealand. And I'm going to get Paul, would you mind introducing yourself to my audience?
Oh, well, hello, Danette, and to everybody who's listening. It's lovely to be with you. I'm coming to you from the top of the South Island of New Zealand. It's the best place in New Zealand. It's the sunshine capital. It's called Nelson. And yeah, look, it's lovely to be with you. I've had an interesting career, Danette, not one that's had a straight line. I trained as a lawyer and have never practiced as a lawyer. So I've worked in government. I've managed adult education centres. I've been a partner in a little consulting firm. And yeah, in all those experiences, what I've noticed is people waste a lot of time in meetings that don't go anywhere. Projects often blow up and blow out. So yeah, I work with leaders and teams now to help them address some of those things.
So you're a perfect guest for today's session because I love that variety of what your career has looked like because it means that you've tried a number of different things, and I suspect that the topic today will be a very interesting conversation.
Yeah,
so
I thought that was a weakness for a long time, Danette. Oh, I can't focus on anything, but actually it was a strength. I'm interested, I'm curious in so many different things, and that's helpful when we're collaborating.
Love that. Excellent. And it's the same as me. I love curiosity. All right, let's start with question 1. So first question is, what have you seen or experienced that helps you with collaboration and or problem solving?
Well, there's so much we can draw on from, right the day that we're born. And I've got 2 young kids. It's my youngest, his 3-year-old birthday today. So I'm celebrating that. And we had this lovely morning this morning, presents and all the excitement of that. And my wife works on a Monday as well. So she was out of the door at 7:30 and I was getting the kids ready. Massive meltdown tantrum when I tried to get the clothes on to get him to go to kindy today. And it was like the world was ending. 5 minutes later, he's absolutely fine. And he's moved on. And I love that about kids. They are so passionate and they care so much about something and they hold it really lightly. And I reckon that's something I'm learning from my kids that I'm able to bring more into my work when you're collaborating is know what you care about and know that others may not care about it as well. And so you've got to hold it lightly.
I love that answer and I love that reminder because I actually wrote a post this morning about lightening up at work because it works with our brain rather than against our brain and totally with collaboration.
What do you mean by that?
So when we're light, so rather than frowning and scowling and stuff like that, which triggers a threat response in others, when we sort of recognise that, you know what, we're all going to come out the same way in the end. So why not just make it a little bit lighter and a little bit more playful? It actually helps make us, if we're the leader, someone that people will want to approach, someone that people will want to collaborate with, versus where we're really concentrating and really stern and the world's a bit, so I really like that answer, and, you know, recognising that to collaborate with others, light is better.
Such little things that can make us frown, though. I remember in my first job, someone came past my desk and said, "Paul, why are you looking so worried?" And it turns out that I needed glasses and I just didn't realize it yet. But there's a lot of heaviness in the world. There is a lot of darkness at the moment. And I love that idea of being lighter and bringing the light as a leader. I think there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah, totally. Oh, I love that. All right, let's go to question number 2, which is, I'd love for you to share an example of poor collaboration and or problem solving, and particularly, like, you don't have to name the organisation or anything, but particularly what were the impacts where it wasn't approached in a really great way?
I think we first need to know what we're even meaning by collaboration and whether it's the right thing to do or not. My friend and mentor Anne Braithwaite talks about the difference between, if you're in a band and there's a difference between coming up with the music, like the Rolling Stones coming up with their signature song, and you as a cover band playing that song. The first is collaboration, where there's the spirit of coming up with something new and sharing power and sharing the voice. And then there's teamwork, which is being able to play it live together. And different problems demand different responses. So for me, it's always coming back to, what problem are we solving? That's always the first question for me.
I love that you defined it, and I love that question about what problem are we solving for. So have you had an instance where perhaps you were working with an organisation or something where it ended up either they didn't get that definition right, so different people perhaps were on different pages, or it just ended up with a result which wasn't what they were hoping for? And I'm really curious about the impact and why that happened.
Oh, no, Danette, never. I've never had that happen. All the time. I mean, just recently in a procurement process, and I think procurement processes can be dangerous in this area because the problem gets defined by quite a small group of people who often only have a certain view of what the problem is. And they generally work in the same organization, often in the same team. So they've only got a slice of the world that they're judging their problem definition on. So we had one procurement process at the consulting firm I was in where they were going out with a several $100,000 procurement process, and our response to the tender was, we don't think you've defined the problem well enough. It wasn't in that fewer words. It was more, we went back with a whole bunch of questions. And through those questions, that actually helped them to realize, right, there might be other stuff at play here that we hadn't even thought of.
That's a great example. And in fact, we had one of those today where we had to ask questions. So even the fact that people are asking lots of questions sort of says maybe we haven't necessarily got to what it is we're trying to solve. So that's a really great tip. I love that, Paul. Thank you. And my next question is, based on your experience, what tips do you have for others? And this next bit is from Jez, who hosts our Magical Learning podcast. So he said, including young people around developing their problem-solving and collaboration skills. So, people starting out in the workplace obviously need to learn about collaboration and problem-solving. And can I say, people at my age and all the way in between, because the world's changing, I suspect there's new things they need to be learning. So I'm curious about some of your tips about how we could do it better.
Well, it's interesting that there's an assumption in there that we as adults can teach young people. And actually, I think we can probably learn more from them than they can from us in this area. My wife is a primary school teacher, and she's done her master's thesis on how do you do inquiry-based learning with young people. And This wasn't really done when I was going through school. I'm 36 now, 37, something like that. It's always worrying when you start to lose track of how old you are, and I've definitely got to that stage of life. So they have an inquiry-based learning in school where they set a topic and they will spend the entire term asking questions. Why are we interested in this? Where do we see this problem showing up? What could you do about it? And so there's a generation coming through who are actually being better trained in those 4 C's: collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and creativity, which I think it's a UN panel from memory has said that those are the 4 key skills for the future. So, and in our workplaces, we're using more and more technology than ever, and young people are natives in that. So I reckon there's just as much to be learned going both ways.
I love that. So any tips that, apart from the inquiry, is there any other tips that people could use just to start to improve those skills for themselves?
Just ask the question. I love questions. They are, for me, they're like a wizard's wand. You wave that wand and something new can emerge. So, going back a step to your question about young people and what we can learn, asking them what works in your experience. What have you seen that helps in this situation? What do you think the problem is? Why is that going on? And so every time we ask a question, we uncover something more, and that means then that we're more likely to be responding to the real problem, not just the first signal of a problem.
Love that, and great advice. And I'm with you. Love questions. Just because, when we ask a great question from a brain science perspective, it opens our minds up to more possibilities than if we ask, why is this happening to me? Which is not a good question at all. So I love the fact that you keep exploring and unpicking beyond that first layer to go, okay, what else could we find out about this particular thing?
I like to add, though, that sometimes questions can be frowned upon or feel like a mini act of rebellion. We get trained to know the answers, to be an expert in something right through school, and if you go into tertiary education and beyond. So sometimes there'll be something in you that'll go, no, don't ask the question because you might look stupid, or don't ask the question because people might think that you're undermining them. And so my message is always just ask, just keep asking the question. And it's the way that you ask it without an intention to blame, but coming back to your point around that power of curiosity, when we kind of have that direction behind a question, then we can ask anything of anyone and we can see what comes out of it.
Love that. And my favorite phrase is, I'm curious.
Yeah.
So when I'm asking the question, I actually lead with that to sort of say my intent around the question as well.
Yeah, I've noticed you doing that on the podcast. You don't have to do it with me, Danette. It's okay.
It just
I'm not going to bite you off.
Oh, it's inbred in me.
Yeah.
So next question is, I'd love to hear your favourite example of problem solving and collaboration and why it's your favourite example.
I'm drawing an absolute mind blank, Danette, because I just love the everyday examples of this. And I think sometimes we can look for these massive world-changing examples of collaboration, but sometimes it's just the small tweaks that we can make to our everyday working life. I mean, when we are drowning in meetings and we're bogged down with emails and work life is just frantic, it can be tempting to go look for those silver bullets, for those big changes that are going to make the biggest difference. And sometimes that's helpful. Sometimes it's just the little things. I was just reading about employee suggestion schemes, where in large companies, they have these mechanisms where employees can say, hey, I've noticed this is going on. I wonder what happened if we tried this. And like in Toyota, they have one of these, and 80% of the suggestions get implemented, and they've made billions of dollars of savings and productivity improvements on the back of it. Or one example was, I think it was an airline, or it might have been Boeing, I'm not sure, but the suggestion was, what if we cleared the lime scale from the pipes in the aircrafts? Pretty sort of simple suggestion, which has led to $600 million per year savings in fuel costs. So I just think we have to look at the people who are right close to the work, and often that isn't the chief executive. That might be people on the shop floor, that might be people who are out there rubbing shoulders with customers. And if we can listen to them, that's where we're going to be able to get great ideas from that are relevant for the people that we're working with.
And I love that answer for a number of reasons. Firstly, it doesn't need to be big. It can be quite simple. And the people that are doing it are often the ones that notice stuff and come up with great suggestions. And so giving voices to all is also really important, because some organisations, they're not necessarily interested in voices sort of lower down in the organisation, particularly if they've got that old leadership mindset, which is the leaders must have all the answers, which in today's chaotic world, no one has all the answers. Great answer.
I think the other danger that can happen with collaboration and with innovation and creativity is it gets put in a box off to the side as well. And so, I've seen organizations, they'll go, great, we've got our innovation program, which is over there. And we leave those people to do the innovative thing. But actually, what if we incorporate it into the DNA of our organization? That's just so much more powerful.
Love that and totally agree. Nice. All right. My last question, is there anything else you'd like to share, including any helpful resources around collaboration and problem solving?
Oh, I've got lots of resources on my website, Danette. My obsession is around facilitation as a leadership practice. And, going back to what you were just saying about the old model of leadership, I think a lot of us were trained to think of leadership as being primarily about direction. It's even in the job titles, a company director, for instance. And so, I'd liken that to the role of a conductor of an orchestra, where everything's kind of pre-scripted. You've all got your music and you're all playing off the same song sheet, and you want it to be exactly as you've decided, and the conductor is the one who is making that flow through everybody. But I reckon we need to think of ourselves more as jazz band leaders. So, a jazz band, the leader will set a key and will look around and make sure everyone's ready to start, and they'll support each other. But actually, they're not going to wander over and tell that trombonist how to do their solo. They're not even going to tell them when to do it. It just naturally flows through the communication that happens. So I think one of the most important things is to first get our mindset right around how we're leading and why we're leading.
Love that, and love that whole thing about the conductor versus the jazz band, and just watching the magic that comes from jazz when we let everyone shine and bring their part. So that's awesome.
So the jazz band leader, they're a facilitator. They're making it easy for others to do their best work. There's a couple of things on my website, Danette, paulmcgregor.co.nz, and I'll be releasing my next book, which I'm calling Leading by Facilitation. And I want to have it in my hands before Christmas. There we go.
How gorgeous. I just had to make sure my mic was on then. So I look forward to that book, Paul. So what we will do with the podcast description is make sure that there's a link to your website so people can access those resources as well. So, Paul, is there anything else you wanted to add before we finish the podcast today?
Well, I'm curious, Danette, what made you focus on collaboration for season 2? Why did you put it so high up the list?
I just know that a lot of people are struggling with what's going on at the moment, and I know that with collaboration, when it's done well, we hear more voices, we get better perspectives, and I know people are struggling with problem solving. So I thought, those two sort of go hand in hand. in a lot of ways. So I just decided to talk to a number of people who could sort of help people get better at collaborating and also problem solving, hence why I invited you, Paul.
Yeah, nice. Oh, well, I love what you're doing with the podcast, Danette, and I really enjoyed reading your book as well. So thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, audience, and we look forward to the next edition. All right, thank you.
Hey there, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I know I took a lot of notes and I loved Paul's energy. As mentioned at the top of this episode, I am going to read out the question that Danette has answered in her perfect audio where mine failed. So you won't hear my response to this, but I'm going to read this out and then I'm just going to edit in where Danette answered this question in our previous recording. Okay, so here's the question. The question came in from Ash, and this is, sorry, I should mention, if you are a listener of this show and you want to submit questions, go to either YouTube or Spotify. There's places for submitting questions there, and Danette may answer them in a future episode. This season, of course, we're focusing on problem solving and collaboration, as well as adaptability, but problem solving and collaboration is the theme of season 2. So we've got a question here from Ash that kind of relates to that. So here's Ash's question. I'm reaching out because honestly, I've been having a tough time dealing with changes in my life. It seems like no matter what the situation is, whether it's something small at work or a big personal life event, I struggle to adapt and accept the new reality. I've seen how supportive and insightful this community can be, and I'm hoping to get some advice. How do you cope with change? Are there any strategies or mindsets that help you embrace the uncertainty or newness of a situation rather than resisting it? I'm really trying to get better at this, but it's been a challenge. Any personal stories, tips, or words of wisdom would be greatly appreciated. Thanks in advance for your help, Ash. And here's what Danette said to that question.
And Ash, you are totally normal. We are hardwired as humans not to really like change. Like our body likes comfort. And so it's learning that when we resist change, we're using a lot of energy to fight something that actually is going to happen anyway. So part of the book, and I have a model which is called ACCEPT. And ACCEPT stands for we're authentic, we're curious, we collaborate, we experiment, we problem solve, we transform, and we're sustainable. But the whole idea of just when change is coming, if we accept that it's happening anyway, rather than resisting it, we can use our energy to go, all right, how could this help me? How could this actually improve what I'm doing? Who could I work with to actually make this a positive thing rather than our brain, which naturally will say to us, this is a negative thing. So I love the idea that you talked about mindset and the reframe, because really our brain's going to want to go, this is bad. I love Robin Sharma's question, what's the opportunity here? And he calls that WTOH, what's the opportunity here? So just even asking your brain, what is the opportunity, opens your brain up to be more curious about potential possibilities. The more you repeat those questions that open up your brain, like what's the possibility here? How could this benefit me? And notice they're all looking for the positives of the change. And change in our brain will have some negative and some positive. Our brain will want to focus on the negative, bring it back a little bit more to the positive, allows our brain to stay open to opportunities that if our brain is more closed down, it's going to miss. So Ash, when your brain starts firing up and going, this isn't working for me, go, what is the opportunity here? And just stay open. Ask other people, in this situation, what benefits have you found? And by doing that, you're starting to gather data to help you see not just the stuff that we have to manage, like the risks and that, but also potential opportunities that could give you better possibilities moving forward. So know that you're normal. Don't beat yourself up about that. And obviously looking after yourself, good self-care, because that keeps your brain open as well. Hope that's helpful.
Alrighty. Amazing insights from Danette. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. We'll be back to business as usual next week. This is just a bit of an awkward one, but I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. What a great conversation with Paul. And as always, everybody, stay adaptable.